We've talked about authentication protocols at the RSA and TLS levels, but more generally, there are different approaches to authentication in terms of the mechanisms that you use to authenticate a user. The most common kind of approach is something that the user knows, specifically a password, or it might be a mother's maiden name if you're trying to reset a password at a bank. But this is not the only possibility. Another approach to authentication is relying on something that a user has, whether it's a private key, as in RSA, or maybe it's their phone, their physical device, or an RFID card that gets them into a building, the access to an email account. So if you create some new account at a web server and it wants your email to get started, that's relying on the user having an email account. They know the password to get into the email or some other authentication, but it's having an email address that is being used to authenticate to the new service. Or being able to receive a text message at a particular phone number is a similar sort of deal. The last possibility is relying on something that the user is. So a user has a face, but this is different than having a phone in that if you break your phone, you can go get a new one. But a face is tied intrinsically to the identity of the user. The same for a fingerprint or a retinal scan, a signature to some degree, because it's not just the words that are signed, but exactly the way the letters are shaped and how the letters are connected, or some voice imprint. All of these are ways to authenticate a user based on what they are. Each of these approaches has drawbacks and benefits, so relying on something that the user knows is especially popular because it's easy to have the user communicate that by typing a password into even something as simple as a terminal, for example. And that's one of the reasons that passwords are so widely used, because they're easy to get from the user. We are all familiar with the drawbacks of passwords. They can be hard to remember, especially secure passwords, and then we need extra tools like password managers that, again, have to be authenticated. Many systems rely on something that the user has. The benefits of relying on something the user has is they don't have to remember it. It's something that is likely to be on hand. Everyone has their phone with them, or it's easy to keep your access card to the building with you. And the ease and consistency of this for the user, as opposed to the end of it device, is the benefit of that approach. Of course, a drawback is that a phone or a badge can be lost or even stolen. And so that's the main drawback of the has authentication approach. The is authentication approach has the advantage that a user can't forget their face or their fingerprint. The fingerprint is literally always on hand. But the big drawback of the is approach is that it's immutable and imitable. So you can't change your fingerprints, and someone can take a mold of your hand and imitate your fingerprints. Given that these different mechanisms have different benefits and different drawbacks, most modern systems compensate by using two-factor authentication. And that just means using two different kinds of mechanisms, often from two different categories here. That you know a password and that you have a phone to tap and say, yes, I would really like to log in. For the context of today's discussion, these different authentication approaches illustrate that there are different ways to authenticate, or more generally, different ways to arrive at a capability to access a resource.